let's go on a little lighter topic. I want to introduce another section of storytelling and do a little test with you guys to start um, tuning you into what your eyes are seeing so you can use that in your visualizations. So let's talk about how you see first before we go into this. And how you perceive the world isn't straightforward. What happens when you see something is light will refract off a stimulus, it'll go into your eye, travel through your optic nerve, and it goes all the way back into your visual cortex. And this is quite an old part of the brain, and there's some remnant things left over in the visual cortex from when we were not apex predators and we had to constantly be scanning our environment to make sure we're safe and we don't need to run anywhere. So we still have these things. This is called the iconic memory. And we can leverage this now because we're now the apex predator. So we can leverage these now in visualizations where you can have people pick up things and they'll passively notice it and they won't even know that they're focusing and their brain is working on it. So let's try. I wanted to ask you guys, do your eyes stay focused on one particular thing in this picture? If you're like me, your eyes are probably going first to the green herbs, and then they're bouncing to the red tomatoes, and then maybe, yeah, the green herbs. Yeah, middle. But then they don't really stay there. They're bouncing back and forth between the green and the red. Yeah, Leonard, middle for sure. The reason for that is, for all you artists out there, if you know the color wheel, red and green are complementary colors. And yeah, exactly, lots of colors to bounce between. They're complementary colors, so your eye's not going to stay focused on one. It's going to keep bouncing back and forth. And this is a perfect example of what you don't want in your visualizations. You want to make sure that you have one main focal point, and that's really the piece of information you want your audience to grab. Let's try it again with this one. First thing, what do you guys see? Exactly. Exactly. Boat. That seems like everyone's saying the boat. Yep, and that's exactly why. That's because we're using that iconic memory that we have in our visual cortex. And the first thing our eye sees is something out of place. So that's telling us, oh, we need to make sure that this is not danger. Well, it's not. And so we're focusing there, and it's hard for our eyes to move off of it. So that's how you want to kind of put this into your visualizations. Just you want to make sure you have that one focal point. I want to try one more little exercise. Can you guys see how many 4s there are? Isabel, I'm sorry if you're hearing that. There's gardeners outside. I appreciate that. Yep, Kiana, there's a lot of 4s. And what could make that easier? Would this help you to count all the 4s? Yeah, good job. Hey, you counted them. Good job. Awesome. So look, using your iconic memory, you don't have to go one by one when you count the 4s. You can just look straight across and say, okay, 4 plus 2 plus 1. So that's how your iconic memory can work for you in your visualization creation. And what that iconic memory, those little tools you can use, those were coined pre-attentive attributes by an author called Cole Nussbaumer-Knaflic. And these are all based off of Gestalt principles, and a group of German psychologists in the 1900s came up with these Gestalt laws. And what these laws were meant to do is just explain how the brain takes chaos and makes order out of it. So the brain will naturally see something like we saw with the orange boat. It'll make sense and say, okay, that's something that needs to be, you need to pay attention to. When you see things that are grouped separately, your brain associates them as sharing like characteristics because that's just how your brain makes sense of the chaos. And you can do the same thing with white space and intensity and many of things. And you can leverage these in all of your visualizations. So let's try to build one visual. This one is a pretty basic visual. I'm sure you guys are doing much more complicated things in your school or work, but my hope for this is that you can maybe take a few tricks here and just apply it to your life. So here's some mock data. This is about 20 rows of data. And we'll say the spreadsheet represents a startup sales in the USA and Canada. And to be profitable, both countries must reach a monthly goal of 325 sales. And so what's happening here is the Canadian sales are struggling, and possibly they're thinking about pulling out of the Canadian market. So your job is to just compare the Canadian sales against the US sales and then highlight their track record for meeting their monthly goal. Your job isn't to figure out whether they should pull out of the Canadian market. All you want to do is just highlight what's going on here. So let's say we put this data into Excel. This is pretty much when you hit that chart button, they're going to pop up with a bunch of recommendations, and this is pretty much what you're going to get. So does anyone have a guess as to what default visualization do you think would be best to convey this? We have time series data, and we're looking at both on the right, the line chart, lower right. Yep, I'm agreeing with all you guys. Exactly, yes, the line chart, because it's time series data, so it has a linear relationship. Absolutely, good job. Nice, you guys are good. Lena, I would agree with the bar or the line too. And the only reason why I wouldn't choose the bar, because it does kind of show that linear thing. But for me, I just think that when you have 20 data points, the bars get too messy. And I think it's good to have that white space in there. So, but it's subjective. I feel like if you did it properly, you could probably get away with a bar chart as well. So let's say we chose the line chart, and I like to always just make a list of little enhancements I want to do. So first thing up is you want to add titles to both axes, because the worst thing is you don't want someone guessing what your data is. Even if it's super obvious, like month and year, still put it. I want to change the color scheme. I want to bring the Canadian line into focus, because that's the main thing. And we're comparing it against the US. So it's important to have the US line still there, but let's let it go to the back a little bit with a lighter color. I want to add that goal line. So they're supposed to hit 325 sales per month. So I'm just going to kind of put that line there as a visual cue as to if they're hitting it or not. And then maybe let's try emphasizing some important data points, and we'll see what that looks like. So after applying the visual enhancement, let's take a step back, and usually it's going to take you a couple times to figure this out. For me, I'm not too happy with the way this looks. It's looking better, but I still think that we can improve it a little bit. So let's make our next list. So I think that personally, I would like to lighten that gold color because it's too intense, and you just want to see, maybe let's make it a dash line just so that there's a visual cue that that's where your goal needs to be, but we don't want to bring all the focus there. And I want to remove the legend from the bottom and bring it up onto the lines. I don't like that the legend's on the bottom and drawing the attention away from the eyes. And I want to add actual points, data points. And also, I do think it's important to remove the grid lines. I know a lot of people are scared of white space, but don't be scared of the white space in the back, because it's actually a Gestalt principle. When your brain sees white space and then an object, it automatically tries to put the white space in the back, and then it'll bring the object to the forefront. So that's another trick that'll bring your visualization right out. So let's see what that looks like after we've implemented those. And I would say I'm pretty happy with this pretty basic line graph. It's showing that Canada didn't do so great at first. Looks like maybe they're picking up. As you can see, we moved the legend and I put them right on the lines, and I use the same color as the lines to depict the legend. And that's also a Gestalt principle of similarity. And there's also a principle of proximity. So when you put things that are the same color close to it, then your brain is automatically going to associate that they're together, they have a relationship. So that's how I would make this line graph. I hope you guys were able to take something away from this and use this in your lives.